leave it up to a marketer to mess things up. This device here, along with what's happened, 5, 6, 7 years ago, what happened in 2020, we now have the attention span that's less than that of a goldfish. We're bombarded by ads and by content. And the key here is trust is so important because as a society, we are seeing things and we don't know as to whether they're authentic. To me, it has never been more important to have a personal brand. And this is not about just what can we get from that of our markets. It's more about what can we give to our markets. And by the way, that trust is not built overnight. How do you build that trust over time so that when someone thinks of you, they not only know you, they not only like you, but they trust you? And we've heard the phrase AI slop. And it's not just about AI, but it's taken the easy way out and just regurgitating things. I do believe that this is where, once again, I use in many cases, I reference the fact that like raw is real. Most people use, let's just say ChatGPT or Claude, like that of a glorified Google. That's not what makes it these tools. I am not concerned with AI taking my role. I am concerned, and what keeps me up late at night is someone that knows how to use these tools better than me taking my role. A fool with a tool is still a fool.
Hey, David, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me, Don. Thank you so much.
I'm super excited to have you. It's not often that we have marketing experts on with us. And so I think I'm really excited about today's conversation where we're going to talk about the trust economy. What is that? Why does that matter in terms of marketing? Before we get into it, though, for those that don't know David Morgan, I'd love for the David Morgan to tell us who he is, a little about himself and his background in the industry.
Yeah, no, once again, Don, I really, really look forward to today's conversation. I'm going to start off with this is the real David Morgan and not the AI version of myself. And with that said, for those of you that that don't know me, a little bit more about myself is, I'm the co-founder of SD Marketing. We provide marketing services for that of the entire ecosystem of the security industry. And it's predominantly digital marketing. But a little bit more about like me personally, what makes me tick, the things that are important to me. For those of my friends, including yourself, as you know, Don, this industry has given so much to me personally, to my family, and to that of our team here. And we've learned so much over the industry. We've made so many lifelong friends. For me, I volunteer at many of our industry associations. When I'm at conferences, you'll usually see me sitting in the class along with other integrators and alarm companies and guard companies and fire alarm companies. And why? Because it's our job to evangelize and get the good news out for that of the groups that we work with. So it's really important to get to, as you take a look over my shoulder, this is just from the last couple of years in terms of these trade shows. And you take a look at what drives me, it's this young lady right here, as well as our two kids, as well as that of our team. I mean, I'm super passionate about everything that I do, super passionate about our industry. I'm very blessed to be a part of our industry. We've learned so much. But as far as I'm concerned, the best is yet to come.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So when we were planning for this, trying to think about the intersection of AI and marketing, you as in marketing to me, and coming up with a topic, there was something circling around for me that I actually kind of brought out of the ESX show coming out of Texas we just got back from, where we were on a panel and one of the panel members was an integrator. And even preparing for that panel, she had talked about something called implied that we're in a trust recession. And for someone like me that's in AI space now, I was like, she's right. She's right. I was like, because there's so much stuff that's happening around the AI space that it can automate this and can transform that, and then can do like 5,000 emails in a day and give me 500 leads in 4 hours, and it's not just a big promise, big delivery thing that can erode trust, but there's a lot of other things, right? And so that's why we're talking about this because to me, and this is where the conversation will come and bring you in to elaborate for the audience is branding, marketing, everything about the interaction with the customer in the early stages to me is centered around or has something to do with trust and earning trust and maintaining trust. And so that's kind of what we're talking about, right? Is this idea of what is the trust economy, at least in terms from a marketing and an AI standpoint as we are in today. And so what I wanted to start off with to talk about how the world's changed. And I think ultimately to kind of get everyone aligned on the current AI landscape and really why this conversation matters. And so the first question I have for you is, as AI makes it easier than ever for anyone to create content, are we entering a trust economy where credibility becomes more valuable than creativity?
Don, it's a really good question. And I'm going to start off with leave it up to a marketer to mess things up.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, whether it's your favorite LLM model, could be ChatGPT, could be Grok, could be Claude, it could be any number of these models. Never before in the history could a marketer go in and say, create a X, hit submit, and then post that. And oh, by the way, these tools through automation, this is part of a small part of your overall expertise is to be able to deploy these in an automated fashion. My point with that is trust, but let's couple that with the fact that this device here, along with what's happened, 5, 6, 7 years ago, or with what happened in 2020, we now have the attention span that's less than that of a goldfish. And let's couple that with the fact that each and every single day, we are bombarded by, if not hundreds, thousands of ads on our phone, whether we're watching TV, whether we're, online, all these online, offline methods. If you couple all of these, we are bombarded by ads and by content. And the key here is trust is so important because as a society, we are seeing things and we don't know as to whether they're authentic. I'd made a joke a few minutes ago about the fact that, this is the real David Morgan and this is a real Don. You're going to hear that by some of my imperfections and some of the words that I use, but I'm being my true authentic self. It is, to me, it has never been more important for each of us, Don, for you, for your business, and me for my business, to have a personal brand. And this is not about just what can we get from that of our markets. It's more about what can we give to our markets. Yes, you and I both run for-profit businesses, but it's been never in the history of our civilization, I believe. It's never been more important to have a personal brand, to be authentic, and to build that trust. And by the way, that trust is not built overnight. You mentioned this a couple minutes ago as we got started. Yes, we provide marketing. And it's like when I first walked into our industry, it's like, oh, hey, wait, there's the sales guy that's selling marketing. But guess what? I kept coming back and I didn't ask for things. I was all about how do we give? How do we give to this industry? And before we ask for anything, how do we give more? How do we become a valuable resource? How is it so that, and whether Don, whether it's yourself, myself, or anyone, how do we, when someone thinks of you or I, or if you're, as you're listening to this, think about yourself. How do you position yourself and how do you build that trust over time so that when someone thinks of you, they not only know you, they not only like you, but they trust you. And I know we'll probably get a little deeper into this over the next few minutes, but I cannot underscore enough how important that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in terms of when I think of credibility to me is that you position credibility by being an expert in what you do, which is fine. But then there's some other aspect to what you mentioned that you also have to show up to the things where your community is. And what I also think about deeper is you're not just showing up, but you have to show up when you show up. Like I got to be present. I got to be in the conversation, right? I don't like we use the word got to be. I get to be in the conversation, maybe a little bit better, right? And so that credibility is something I think about, right? Where we think about curating community by giving value. Gary Vaynerchuk, where he talks about kind of like the jab, jab, right hook. Like I'm going to give, 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 and I'm going to ask at some point, which is reasonable because I have to eat. I got to support my family just as you do. And but it's that, right, versus this idea of like high volume touch points, and that's somehow gonna just create this massive amount of demand, right? But really what people want is they likely want to feel heard. They want to feel like you understand them. And what better way to do that than to show up when you when you show up, curate community along the way and help people, right? Not sell people, help people. And so completely on board with what you're saying. So I wonder next, like, do you think we're experiencing a trust recession then? And like where people question almost everything they see online really until it's proven authentic.
So the short answer is yes, but
Mhm.
in my opinion, I believe we're in the infancy of that. And why? Because as these tools get better, it's going to make it easier for us to use that cheat code, so to speak. And look, we're all, I shouldn't say we're all, it's very easy for us to use that easy button to be able to just, we've heard the phrase AI slop. And it's not just about AI, but it's taking the easy way out and just regurgitating things and things in that regard. So I believe we're in the infancy of that. And I do believe that this is where, once again, I use in many cases, I reference the fact that like raw is real. And yes, perhaps you and I have specialized equipment to make things look a little nicer. Here at the office, I've got a number of members of our team. We've got tens of thousands of dollars of HD camera equipment, lighting, audio. But I'll tell you what, you don't need that. If you look at like the average integrator, and it could be on the vendor side as well, each and every single one of us has one of these. You can go to Amazon. I'm not going to grab it because I'm going to get out of frame here, but you can go get, 5, 10, $15 selfie stick. If you've got a little bit of a bigger budget, you can get some of the nicer tools that are sharing insights. It's like, let's just say, Don, let's just say and I write about this. I think that it's in an upcoming issue or it just came out about how an integrator may be staring at a blank screen in terms of, okay, what do I talk about in terms of my social, in terms of communicating with my existing customers, sending things out to prospects. And the key here is the things that we take for granted, the questions that are asked of us on a daily basis, the things that we know because we are the true experts at what we do. Not everyone else in the market is. All right, keep in mind your existing customers, they're looking to us. And when I say us, I've got, let's just say I'm ABC security. I'm just making this up right now. And let's like things that I take for granted, questions that I'm asked, jot those down. Create a 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute video. Share it. It's like I just got a, just had a meeting with, I'm making this up, of course, team, but, it's like I just met with, with a prospect and he or she asked me X. And it was a good question. And I thought, okay, if this is a question I've been asked a lot lately. So let me actually answer this question because I would imagine if I've been getting this question asked, I'd imagine these are not the only ones that have that information. You talk about batteries, low battery signal, how an integrated system, how you can leverage integrated systems. And I know I may be talking about some of the resi, but even on the commercial side, like just all the things that we take for granted puts us in a position to be able to show our authentic self, show how we are trying to be useful, how we're giving back, how we're educating. And these things over time will continue to build that know, like, and trustability.
Yeah. So if you concisely would be able to define what authentic means, what would you say?
So concisely, I would say sharing things, I'm not you, Don, and you're not me. It's like being my authentic self. Who is David Morgan? And sharing things in what comes natural to me in a useful, helpful way. And doing that on a consistent basis across multiple mediums, showing up and really just once again giving back. Like it's a combination of all those things. That's how I would describe that.
Yeah. And I think when we think about the distance from authenticity to like trust, like what is authentic that might deserve trust earned is okay, I'm myself. But what you see a lot of times is the people underusing some of these tools that they become so generic. They all have M dashes. They kind of sound the same. The gosh forbid the imagery that they make looks all the same. AI made it. And people that use these tools know that when they're novices, the low effort input that goes into making them. Like I'm in a friends group and we were making like funny like World Cup pictures or whatever and use basic prompt and it's pretty good. And right, but there's a big difference between that and like where we do homegrown graphics, for example. And so, but the thing is, it's like maybe there's a balance of those. Maybe there's some things that could take in more AI generated things versus less, for example, like if I was given a big presentation. I might use AI to help research, fact check some of the points, but my content is mine, right? And so I'm going to come with whatever I feel is best for my audience because they're taking the time to listen to me, as opposed to, maybe something else that would be a little bit less or low volume, right? But there's still, I think it's because of, it could also be because of the lack of understanding of how to use these things that creates an accidental inauthenticity that people start to erode trust, right? It's not like they want to be able to deliver something more frequent. They want to be able to use the power of the tools, but what they don't want is to reach an inauthenticity that would create a lack of trust. So then does it become like, I need to learn how to use these tools better, or I need to learn how to, or when to use these tools? I don't know if you have any
So
thoughts on that.
yeah, so actually I do, Don. So it's interesting what you're sharing right now. So let's take a step back. If you look at these tools, these are the most powerful tools that have ever been created
Mhm.
in my lifetime, anyways. And if you think about it, these tools have basically like if I were to ask you rhetorically, Don, how many books have you read? And of those books, what percentage of those books can you recite? And let's just say I'm making a number up. Let's say you've read 100 books and you can recite 5% of it. I don't mean verbatim, but meaning you retain that. Like you would be, and don't hold me to this, but you'd be almost like a genius. My point though, with these tools have basically inventoried the entire internet, every single book that has been ever made, and they can recite it within a split second. Like perhaps 98, 99 plus percent accuracy. My point with this is there is just way too much context. So going back to like the overall arching theme of the authenticity, this is where context is king. Instead of once again saying to your favorite tool, create a X, Y, or Z, using it like using it like a novice, it is adding that proper context. It is getting into your mind. One of the ways really quickly that I go about doing this is instead of just having it go and search for data, because to your point, it's critical to have things sound like me to be authentic. And I'll get a little bit deeper into this in just a few minutes, perhaps, but it's providing context up front and then also asking it to interview me. Now, by the way, I don't ask it to just randomly submit a number of interview questions. I ask it to interview me by asking one question at a time, up to X amount of questions, depending upon how complex the task is. And what that does is it asks very good questions. Questions like, oh, that's a really good question. It gets me to think. And as I answer that question, and I answer those questions, I should rather say, what it does is whether I'm doing research, whether I'm looking for an output personally or professionally, it helps so that it is not just the AI or slop, but it's extracting from me because once again, I'm using it as a partner and not necessarily just as a tool.
Yeah, that's key. And we see that pretty frequent in the AI space, right? You use it almost like as an advisor, a guide, you know, unless you already have an agent built and then you're already assuming the release control over something, but that's a conversation for a different day. So I want to shift from this idea of where we are in the trust economy into the opportunity, right? Where trust becomes a competitive advantage. You work with a lot of security integrators to help them get a competitive advantage in the market through marketing efforts. And so fundamentally, we're just going to transition from the problem to the opportunity, right? That this all presents of being in a trust economy. A part of that, I think about some of myself, maybe others in the industry that are making efforts towards personal branding. And so, with regards to that, like, has building a personal brand gone from being something that or as a nice to have for people to becoming really one of the few remaining competitive advantage in this AI era? What do you think about this?
It is 100%. It is critical. And I say this, and by the way, it is in terms of your brand, it is not just about your brand, but it's also about like if any of us, including myself, if I'm just mediocre, I'm in big trouble. I am in big trouble. Not just the personal brand, but along with that personal because keep in mind, in terms of forget, you used a phrase a little earlier in our discussion, but it's not just showing up, but it's showing up and you're delivering the goods. I'm not using your exact wording here, And my point with that is we have to strive to be the best version of ourselves. And by the way, AI can help us use that, help us do that. But to me, it is all of the above. I mean, if you do not have a personal brand, because once again, remember these tools, which by the way, today, this is going to be the dumbest that the AI tools are ever going to be. Like even throughout the day, things are continuing to improve. And it's going to be interesting to see where we are a week from now, let alone a month, 6 months, and 12 months plus from now. It is critical because, once again, to me, what keeps me up late at night, like, and I'll finish with this, I am not concerned with AI taking my role. I am concerned, and what keeps me up late at night is someone that knows how to use these tools better than me taking my role. Obviously, if AI gets into AGI and all these other things, it's a different problem to have, and that's out of my control. So to me, the things that AI cannot do in terms of my authenticity, in terms of showing up, being my human self, as well as investing in myself to be the best version of myself in terms of helping others, mentoring my team, building other leaders. These are the things that I'm laser focused on because all of those other repetitive tasks can be outsourced. Either I can delegate them to other members of my team and or to agentic or AI based tools.
Yeah. And when I think of terms of what's competitive, I had Steve Antil on this podcast, CEO of Brebo, and he talked about, actually took it where he had a blog they called AI software. But what he, at least in, I would say, what I would not at least, but he ended in a positive note where it talks about we have a moat in this industry because of the physical devices we have, right? So until the robots come, I think we're okay, right? And so, because we have to physically install something and maintain and inspect something. And so a lot of it being regulated too. So, but when we think about other than just the moat, what we're really good at and maintain a competitive advantage of is something that AI is really, really bad at. There's a saying in the AI space where it's like what's hard for AI is easy for us, and what's easy for us is hard for AI, right? Forget about a robot. Its challenge of filling up a dishwasher is like the most incredible task, but it would crush like a calculus test better than a human, right? So, but what it seems to be the consensus in the ag community where we have a competitive advantage, all of us just out of the box as human beings, is our taste and our intuition. To me, marketing has both of those things. Like I know marketing, there's parallels with psychology. Taste is something that you just can't measure, but you know based on experience. And intuition is also based on experience. And so when we look at these, let's say security integrators or the security operators listening in, you have a strong sense of intuition based on your experience. And so what I've encouraged people to do for a competitive edge is to lean into those things and let that be a part of your North Star as opposed to some of the things that you may not necessarily be able to keep the pace with, right? Like the technology is going super fast. So what I think about is how do I, like you said, use these technologies to enable me to do more? But think about now the competitive accelerator is how do I allow my already really good intuition and taste to grow with these things that I have available to me now? And to me, that's like a huge unlock. That's the human and the AI in the loop, right? Where we're able to do more than what we could before from at least the sake of those two things. But if it doesn't fall into those two things, if it lives on the computer, it doesn't really have that strong of a future, likely, you know. But the point is that we live in a space that does depend on intuition. Marketing is a space that excels at taste and intuition. And so I'm curious if you ever think about those two things and put it on the hat of our industry where even security integrators you know really, really well can capitalize on their own intuition and their own taste coupled with AI and kind of obviously mitigate the part of the trust, right? But I'm thinking what I'm saying, they can accelerate or reduce the trust gap because of their intuition and taste that they've acquired for decades maybe.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Donna, I've not really looked at it from that perspective, but I believe you are spot on. And to me, as you're sharing what you just shared with me, it makes perfect sense. And maybe when I say I've not directly thought about it, I've lived that because you're 100% right in terms of the taste to intuition. And these are things that, once again, that these tools, it goes back to what we're discussing today, is like, what are the things that AI can't do as well as we can, and vice versa. And it's those are the things that we need to lean in on it. That's where, like, you mentioned critical thinking, using the psychology, the school of hard knocks in terms of experience and leveraging all those things. It's interesting. I've had over the years countless customers who are like, "Well, I don't know what I want, but when I see it, I know I'm gonna like it. And I know I'm not helping you out a lot." And I'm sure we've all been there, done that. And it just speaks to what you're saying. So yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a dangerous world in custom software development. It's like we have to define pretty early what success looks like, or we
100%.
scope creep, which is software developers probably worst nightmare. But yeah, I'd love to now shift into how people are using these things, right? So, like, really introducing parts of your philosophy and maybe challenging some common assumptions that we are seeing for people, and even in your network. And so, you said famously that a fool with a tool is still a fool. And so, curious, why do you think so many people are using AI like a first grader instead of treating it like a strategic thought partner?
Okay, so full disclosure, just in case our good friend John Honovich is watching this, he's going to say, "Dave, wait, I said that." Well, so a few weeks back, or maybe a month or two back, I was at a connections conference with Elizabeth Parks, good friend, and she invited me to speak at a panel on AI and marketing in the smart home. And uh, during that discussion, I mentioned from stage, once again, a fool with a tool is still a fool. Let me add a little context to that. As we're talking about with AI, it allows us to just use the easy button. And my point with this is, if we are truly experts at what we do, and regardless as to, like, if we don't know how to use a tool to its fullest capability, the tool is not going to automatically graduate us from first grade to graduating college overnight. But as we are, because this is where, like, the disparity between the haves and the have nots is, whereas as far as it is already, it's just getting started. And that is my point. We have to work on ourselves from the inside out to be the best version of ourselves. We've got to leverage these tools with us being that of more of the thought leader and having it be more of our thought partner. Because, you mentioned like using it like a first grader. Most people use, let's just say, Chat GPT or Claude, like that of a glorified Google. That's not what makes it these tools. I mean, Don, in your business, you go to like the exponential to the next level, whereas you're building these agentic systems that are building, based on the voice, or based on, based on particular. I'm going to do a horrible job of describing what you do, but like you go to like to that to like exponential growth in terms of how to leverage these systems and these tools, whereas you can use it like an easy button. Why? Because of the systems that you built in the first place. But when you look at the average, going to, like, let's just say, once again, you go to like a Chat GPT and you type in a question, you expect a response, and then you move on to the next thing. Like, don't get me wrong, those are things that can help us, but you want to, to me, it's the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. The bigger that we think, the the bigger that we think, the bigger the question, like the more curious we are, the more context we provide it. It allows us so that, a wise individual with a tool helps to exponentially expand what it is that they're able to do in a very short order.
Yeah, so I knew one of the things I'm really grateful for is my ability to just have a lot of business common sense. I might not be the smartest guy, but when I have a lot of inputs coming in, I'm thinking like, dude, there's no way this thing's gonna happen, right? Like, even when methods came out, there was some things I said that ended up coming true because I just leaned on common sense. One of those things was well over a year ago. I felt that because there was so much that people were telling people, and things have changed with regards to prompting. Now you set up skills, you don't have to reprompt, you could do agent loops, and okay, so all that's getting better, right? But I knew then that I still believe today would be that people is very unlikely that people will adjust to AI and that AI will adjust to them at scale, right? There's no way. Now, for the people that do, they have this period of growth that they could see to blow past other people. Unfortunately, that's going to be the anomalies especially in our industry. There's a few guys in our space that are doing really, really cool stuff. I'm super pumped to see what they're doing. But by and large, most people aren't there. And so like to me, definitely behooves people to not try to learn these things. It doesn't mean that their business won't continue to run and their customers are paying them to do the things that they've always been doing before generative AI was ever a thing on the street, right? But for context, what's happening within the AI space, what people are doing, this is how they get ahead with these tools. Really, their infrastructure, to consider them infrastructure, necessary infrastructure. They're setting up what they're calling like a second brain. And that second brain is offloading you into this system, not literally, but you have to type it in, create file bases, organize it, and put in what they call skill files, soul files. All this stuff sounds weird, but the bottom line is you're trying to offload something into this AI system that can be your personal assistant, your real thought partner, right? The thing that's just not an input output that literally like 90% of people, they use something like ChatGPT and they're like, oh, it gets better over time, which is not the case. It gets better based on, let's call it like someone redacted personal information to you based on its training run for what was reinforcement learning. So all the positive, negative forces that you get, you know, its next training run will improve on that to say what are the types of outputs I should deliver that most people would generally find acceptable and creates patterns as a result. The second brain is different. The second brain is basically cataloging, filing the things that bog you down. So you have to be able to ask the right questions. What are the right problems to solve? This is the things you start to offload to second brain and build this out, right? The likelihood that people will do that at scale in our industry, I think it's going to be a long time. I think it'd just be a long time for all of public too. But there is that portion where it's like, hey, it's not that we're competing against our competitor, we're competing against ourselves. And if we see that there's a stretch where we could go beyond our thoughts, our dreams, our capabilities, I think those are the people that will push the envelope, right? But then I think the idea that people will just somehow rise to the occasion and they'll learn all of these things that I know or you know. It's gonna be some time, I feel like. So I wonder, my question to you is this on this is what do we say to those people that aren't really ready to jump into this whole space like we are, right? That really believe in the exponential opportunity, that believe in I need to create maybe this second brain or some way to get ahead in this AI era. Like, what do you say to those people that are like, nah, you know what, David, we're good where we're at?
I got to tell you, Don, this is such a great question. Number one. Number two, pause this and rewind this about 3, 4 minutes. The things that Don just shared, there's such wise words that you just referenced. Some of these things, in terms of second brain, in terms of, he talked about skills a few minutes ago, talked about all these, like some of those things may be a little, call it 103, 104. Let me try and simplify some of these things in terms of, once again, like I'm not going to name names, but there's an SDM top 100 that had sent a note that had made its way to me. And this individual is like, well, you know what? We're an SDM top 100. And I'm talking about maybe like an SDM top 50. So I'm talking about, this is a huge company. And in terms of how they're engaging AI, they're engaging it with a free version of ChatGPT, which I know that's going to make you and I cringe, right? Because number one, to be able to spend even as little as $25, even getting like a team for certain key members of your team, it is one of the best investments in dollars that you can make. So let's talk about, like, getting to like the context or getting started. It's interesting. One of the podcasts that I recently was listening to, because make no doubt, I am striving to be an AI driven leader. We are striving to be an AI driven organization. And it does not happen. You don't hit start and all of a sudden 2 days later, boom, you're all the way at the top. Like, you've got to get started somewhere. And I'm going to start at the end. I'm going to work my way backwards. It was interesting. This podcast I was listening to, they were talking about potentially outfitting their entire office with microphones. And why? Because every single conversation is additional context that can be added to your brain. Now, you talked about to the second brain, excuse me, but you talked about how having it structured, having systems in place so that things automatically go there and they get filed appropriately and things in that regard. We once again, we are working on a lot of these systems and tools right now, but every single meeting that we have with customers during the sales process, during the onboarding process, during the life, every single discussion is recorded. And it's recorded to add that context. Because the key here is making sure that we have that specific context. Number one, we want to make sure we're getting things done right. But it's also, we want to humanize, we want to personalize everything that we do. I'll tell you what, also, Don, I would say, even on the weekends, even if we're averaging the weekends, I would say I'm averaging 4 to 6 hours a day, at least in AI, every single day that I'm spending on AI. And some that listen to me say that are going to think, what the heck is he doing spending all those hours on AI every single day? And by the way, my job is not to produce the work that we do for our customers. I'm one of the leaders of our group. Yes, I work, I manage our biz dev, but I'm also working on the business. I'm working with that of our senior leadership in our company. And once again, it is critical. So getting back to your question, I'll tell you what, if you were new to AI or dipping your toes, when I tell you this is one of the most important things that you're going to do, and I do not want you to look at this as just, how can I get instant gratification? Build those principles that will withstand the test of time. If you're a leader of your organization, or if you're middle management, or if you're, perhaps on the, regardless as to where you are on that ecosystem of your company, to me, it is, each of us are representatives of our groups. It is critical. It is critical to build our personal skills and to help become the best version of ourselves. And ultimately, for the leaders that are out there, the key here is you and your executive team, you've got to buy into this. Have someone that's a champion. Start looking into things. And by the way, I know we're talking about marketing today, but it's not just about marketing. It's all aspects of the business. Obviously you can work with third parties that can help. Don's group with the things that he's working on can help automate a lot of things so that you could reposition some of, instead of having someone on your team that is way too valuable to be doing things that they don't want to be doing in the first place, rechannel to something that's more, that's going to bring more value to the business. And you can be able to do things a lot more quickly, do things that you've never been in a position to do. Obviously in the marketing, there's so many things that can be done. But I challenge you, do not, Don had mentioned the dashes. Many other, like, do not use that AI slot because, and it's not just about Google, it's about individuals. You don't want to be known as the group that's just using, because it's easy to identify that stuff these days. So sorry, I may have gotten off into some tangents, Don, but hopefully that somewhat answered your question.
No, you're good. I think it's great. I think for the sake of people using the tools, maybe using them wrong, maybe using them right. One of the things that it's all trust, right? We're talking about the trust economy, and we talked about how earlier, well, when people use these tools, maybe on surface level, they all sound the same, which can erode trust. But what I'm curious about is with everybody having access, let's say, to the same tools, it's accessible, it's affordable. Like, how in the world do they actually compete against each other? Like, where's the competitive edge? Right. So, like, we talked a little bit about it, but I'm kind of curious to think about, again, it could be from a marketing lens that you have, it could be any other lens that you'd like to share. But we all have the tools, right? You can all have Claude, you can all have Gemini, you know, maybe you can build these agentic systems, whatever, right? It's all there on the table and everybody has access to the tools. So with access that's now democratized and somewhat of the intelligence now democratized, it's a fair playing field. So how does someone compete, stand out in a fair, even playing field?
And it's the whole principle of today's discussion, Don. It's like you or I, you pair us against the average AI user, and we're gonna run circles around them. And why? Because of how we engage with it. We don't just go direct for the output. We add context. We have it interview us. We're very specific with the task that we're looking for it to achieve. We're not just doing the YOLO. We only, you only live once, and you just like a one shot. Okay, get me this and boom. All right, copy and paste, let's go. Meaning, because remember, I know we haven't talked about this today, But one of the big issues that AI continues to have, and by the way, when you give it better context, I don't know about yourself, but I've experienced when I give it better context, I have a lot less hallucination. But oh, by the way, when outputs come, guess what I do? I review each and every single character. I review everything. And this is why it's critical for me to be the master of my craft, so to speak. Because if I don't know what I'm talking about, then guess what? AI is going to make it sound great. And if I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to embarrass myself. If we happen to be doing things for our customers, we're going to embarrass our customers. So my point being here is, whereas it is technically a level playing field, it isn't. And what separates that is each and every single one of us, how we engage with it. You can give me an inferior tool and I'll run circles around most individuals in terms of the outputs.
Yeah. So we talked a bit earlier about thought leadership, personal brand. You mentioned, showing your phone and saying, "Hey, I'm here on site. We just did a fire alarm inspection, 4 times a year. It's going great, whatever." To me, there's some thought leadership esque to that, right? Like I'm putting myself out there to share an update, but I'm also sharing with you that, hey, we know what we're doing and we welcome you to join us in the conversation, in the journey, in the sale, whatever, right? So you can hopefully capture leads. And so, what I'm curious about is because you had mentioned a few times about how AI is your thought leader. When you have AI as your thought leader, what does that day to day relationship look like with AI as your thought leader?
Sure. So I'll actually let me actually state it a different way. So I look at AI like I look at myself as being more of the thought leader, and I look at AI as more of my thought partner. But let me explain what I mean by that. So, what I mean by that is going back to the authenticity, going back to the fact that we are the experts at what we do. It's the relationship is looking at it like the AI is being more of our co pilot. And I don't, and in some cases, it can be our assistant. In some cases, it's our thought partner. In other words, most people, once again, use AI to say, I have a problem. AI, help me solve it. I need to do something. I put in a prompt. I get an output. Maybe I review it, maybe I don't, and I do with it what I may. But to me, I'm here to say, Don, like, think bigger. Remember, AI has virtually all experiences through civilization. AI, within reason, don't hold me literally to this, but it's inventoried this. So my point being here is, let's say you have a big decision to make. Let's say you're going through that big pitch. Let's say you're trying to figure out how do I outcompete my competition? You can have AI as a sales psychologist, ask as a client services manager. That's a silly example, but like I'll give you an example. I don't do this all the time, but in some cases, remember as I'm building that context and I'm using a tool called Read.ai to record each of the meetings that I'm on. And let's just say I have got 3, 4, 5 meetings with a prospect or prospects. In some cases, I will obviously that will all be within a project or within a certain environment within that of, let's say, AI tool. In many cases, like not many cases, some cases, I've asked for AI to act like a sales psychologist and to develop personality profiles of the client or clients. And I've asked for AI to act like those individuals and to give me feedback, whether they're during the sales process or after the sales process. And it's like, okay, let's say for a segment of our customers, part of the initial onboarding is to go through it. Well, with all of our customers, it is, but with the segment, we're going through a very extensive discovery process. And the first output is like a campaign pitch deck, which is going to be restating to them, who, what, when, where, why about themselves and their market, etc. But then also we get to the fun part, which is an overall campaign that's going to be remarkable. It's going to stand out and it's going to speak to theirs. So, what I've done in some cases is as my team is put this together, is I went back to my AI tools and I said, okay, I want you to act like, Tom and Harry as an example. And I want you to give me feedback about this. And it gives me feedback. And the irony in the situation is as we go through that live pitch of the campaign, you'd be surprised with how close things are. And it's based on developing. And by the way, this is one of tens of thousands, if not millions of applications. My point with this is think bigger. And then when you think you're thinking too big, you talked about moat a little earlier. By the way, Don, just in case not everyone knows what a moat is in terms of, you know, around your business. Maybe you can describe to the audience what a moat is, because I want to make sure everyone knows what that is.
Yeah, so it's a metaphor for your creating a competitive distance from your competitor, right? Or distance from your competitor, right? So if you have a castle, your castle is your business, and you want to protect the competitiveness of your business, you build a moat around it. Your competitors are outside of that moat. So you created now a kind of a barrier to entry of sorts by way of your, whatever makes your business unique, what makes you stand out. Could be something proprietary, could be a process that you run. There's actually a really good topic around creating moats for security integrators. I think I'm pretty well aware that security integrators have a hard time differentiating, and they differentiate on service mainly. Well, what is service but process? They don't make anything. They don't really own intellectual property, but what they do own is a process that drives great customer satisfaction, consistency, profitability, right? Predictability. From that side, that's the case. If you're a moat if you're making a product like what we've been doing and other manufacturers, they think about it in terms of intellectual property, what's special about what they're doing, that's so much different than the next guy, but fundamentally what problem they're solving, which actually I think is the central point to anything. Like whether it's you're an integrator or a consultant, just got off a call with a consultant yesterday, whether you're a manufacturer, I just actually talked to a manufacturer yesterday too. And so, those personas that live across the industry, to me, the moat is how you solve the problem differently than somebody else. And the more different that is and unique that is, you create a moat as a result, the metaphorical.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. And I think, just to quickly expand upon that, in addition to Don, what you just said, it's about having that known, liked, and trusted, meaning have that moat being known by your target audience. So, no, love that. I appreciate you explaining that a little bit more, just in case some of the members of the audience didn't know what we meant by that when you shared that a little earlier today.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think about, we talked about earlier, I'd like to take some time to talk about, maybe a little bit unexpected, but I think it's worth talking about, is community. And I say that we talked about it a bit earlier because, so when I had started Highland Tech, I would set up all these email automations, scoring at my CRM, knowing my short list who to cold call because they engage with my email, HTML a certain way, and thinking about how I can automate my way into just having endless leads and business is good. And there's businesses that are doing that and doing that well, right? But I would go to my local chamber and I would just meet with people, and I got to hear from actual small businesses what they're doing, and can take some time, but I think people recognize that. And what ended up happening, maybe because of the podcast, I already had that going before the business started, because it could be some of that, is I just ended up becoming like a voted top thought leader like in the industry, which is insane in the amount of time I've been doing this. But it wasn't like it came by surprise. It came by way of like being involved. And so to me, I love to get your take on the upside of community building, right? Because I know you have that. You show up, you're always there, you're at every event, and like that kind of blood, sweat, and tears and sweat equity is something that I have a hard time thinking that any automation, this is coming from a sales guy. I'm a sales guy, right? Primarily. Hey, somehow that can replace it. And I've seen people also, as a side note, even in AI communities where they joke around, they said, yeah, I can send like 100 emails, but can it show up with some donuts? Maybe take your customer out for Top Golf or something. I don't think so, right? But the point is, like, it's not just sales and that. It's like, how do I curate value that's long term to build community where they trust what we're doing, that will outlast, the clickbait things maybe, or outlast, the high volume emails from AI or something that all look the same now. So I'm curious what your thought is the upside of community building and the economy that we're in.
Well, I'll share two things about the results that I and we have received with all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you've been referencing. And then I'll talk a little bit about our process, and then we'll finish up with how this relates to like the average integrator. So the results, I'll talk about two things. There's a lot more than this, but just for sake of time, every single event I go to, could be a small local show, could be ISC West, anywhere in between. And and I'm talking about every single one. Every single one. And my team can attest this because my team is not with me at all the shows. But when they come with me, they're like, "Oh my God, Dave, now I know why you do what you do." There are anywhere from on the low end, 1 to 2, on the high end, a dozen, maybe a little over a dozen individuals that come up to me. They're speaking to me as if we are great friends. And as embarrassed I am to admit this, I don't know who they are. And number one. Number two, when I have sales conversations with individuals, they come not asking me for credibility about can SD marketing do it? I share with you one example really quickly about that. I had an individual that came up to us, and this has happened at least a half dozen times over the last couple of years. They've come up to us at a show, said, Dave, I know you do marketing. I know you do marketing for integrators. I know you do marketing for vendors as well, but I'm an integrator. I don't know exactly what your program is. I don't know what the costs are, but I want to work together. Now, don't take advantage of me with saying that, but we want to work together. And if you look at it from each of us, that is the type of position that we want to be in. We want to be known, liked, and trusted as that liaison, that authority in what it is that we do. Let's talk about, I'm not going to go through all of these. We just done webinar number 35 or 36. I think number 35, actually. I think webinar this later next month is going to be 36. 3 years in a row. And as you can appreciate, Don, it's not easy. There's a lot of work that goes into these in terms of marketing, creating the content, unique content every single time. It's coming up with the topics. It's all of the above. There has been countless times where I say, you know what, maybe we have to skip this one. But you know what? The show has went on for 3 years in a row. This past one, I was out of town. I had to do it from a hotel room. My point being, but that's one thing. I consider myself, Don, like yourself, a 1%er in LinkedIn. And for those of you that don't know this, the top 1% of content creators post at least once a week on the average. So it's not too late for us. And by the way, if you look at your SSI, your social selling index score, which is, you can Google that, which is your LinkedIn score based on a few criteria. If you look at, like, I'm in the top 1%, and frankly, I have like a C or a D in terms of what LinkedIn grades me, and I'm in the top 1% in our industry in terms of how LinkedIn grades me. My point with this is what that does, like, it's not too late. Like, share, like, we are all really good at networking in person. And if you look at LinkedIn as an example, and by the way, even if you're selling to the residential end user, if you're on the vendor side, 100%. And clearly not every single security company is on LinkedIn. That's okay. There's enough of them to make a big difference, make a big meaningful difference. So my point with this is there are so many other things. Like, if you look at my LinkedIn post, I rarely talk about how we can help you with marketing. It's all about giving back. It's all about, I'm here with my friends at a show. I am, promoting a free webinar that's going to educate you how to grow your business. I am, sharing positive things about others. We're going to be at an event. We'd love to spend some time together. Things in this regard. And this is just the beginning because we send multiple emails out per month. But when we show up in person, I'm present. I go back to, I know we talked about this before. I won't say I'm as good as this when I was a spring chicken when we first got started 15 years ago, but I usually would be the first one at the bar, the last one to leave because this virtual marketing race says, come drink with me. But a lot of business happens at the bar. So anyway, I don't mean to keep getting off into tangents here, but the big thing here is all these things are critically important. Like, I'll finish with this. From the integrator standpoint, as we talked about, as you'd mentioned a couple minutes ago, Don, like, we all are offering similar things. And the key here is, I'm not going to repeat all the things you mentioned, but it's showing up, it's giving back, it's doing community-based events, it's networking, it is leveraging all of these tools to help amplify what you're doing. It's not to replace, but it's here to amplify all those things. But the things that we're talking about today, get that good news out. Work on your processes, be the best you can, provide the best level of service. And then, by the way, talk about it. Oh, by the way, don't just talk about it, have your customers talk about it. Document that, develop processes. Everything's got to have SOPs and processes so you can continue to grow and scale.
Well, I like that you think that everyone should have SOPs, but them having SOPs is like a completely different situation. By the way, I looked up my social selling index, and I'm now that I know that exists because I had no idea. I'm like a 72 out of 100. And for the audience, you can literally go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI And it says your social selling index measures how effective you are at establishing your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. It is updated daily. So it says I'm like a perfect score on building relationships. I'm probably like, and I'm just kind of guesstimating because it's giving me like point system and not percentages, like maybe 50% on engaging with insights, maybe a little bit more 50% in finding the right people, and then establishing personal brand and probably like in the range of like maybe 80%. But that's just super interesting. I didn't even know this existed. But that basically like shares some insights around, if in a trust economy, like how we curate community seems like a combination of those four things. And if I was trying to grade how I'm doing in building towards community and bridging trust, that seems like a good place to start. Sounds like we need to take the social and take social pretty seriously.
100%.
So we are going to land the plane here on one last question. Okay. If trust is becoming the ultimate currency in business, which we believe that it is, and maybe that's what we're getting to in this session, what should every marketer, entrepreneur, and leader start doing today that they will wish they had started years earlier?
So, Don, if I were to ask you when was the best time to plant a tree, perhaps you may say 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. But if I were to ask you a follow up question, say, Don, what's the second best day to plant a tree? We would both agree today is that day. So I would say my call to action, keep in mind, remember, Rome was not built in one day. We talked about a number of things today. We talked about a number of things. Get started today. Jump in both feet. Spend a little bit of money. Because the other thing is, we didn't talk about data and privacy, but there's settings when you get to the paid version so that the LLMs are not learning on your inputs and things in that regard. Get started. Get some business books. There's a book by the name of The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods, and that's Geoff Woods, The AI Driven Leader. And this is not a book about all the how the bells and whistles work. It's about shifting your mindset as to how to think like an AI driven leader. And by the way, you may be a regional sales manager for your company. You may be like a sales rep. You may be a technician. It does not matter. You don't have to own your business to be thinking like this mindset, because regardless as to what your role, you've got to have that entrepreneurial mindset and be thinking about this. How can AI help me do this? This pink Post-it has been staring me right in the kisser for 2, 3, maybe 4, I don't know, 2, 3+ years. I purposely have it as a pink. Even myself, even though I'm spending hours each and every single day on this, I need to remind myself, how can AI help me do this? And it's not to replace me. It's not to think for me. It is to help me think better, bit bigger, I should say. Well, I guess maybe better too, because I have shifted the way that I think about things. I'm trying to always be thinking bigger. I'm thinking about moats for our customers, moats for ourselves. How can we deliver more value? How can I do more with less? I'm not saying the easy button, talking about how can I make more of an impact? I mean, I'm going to share a personal story really quickly. My father passed away a few years back in 2022. And, he and I were very, very close. It was very difficult for me. And growing up as a boy, and as I got older, I would always ask him questions and he would never answer. I'd ask him yes or no questions. He'd say, well, that's a good question. What do you think about this? And he'd go off into some tangents, kind of maybe like the way I am now. And it didn't hit me until the day he passed. He didn't want to give me the fish. He wanted to teach me how to get it on my own. He believed he would have been here much longer, but there was so much wisdom in my father. And my point with this is we need to think more strategically in every single aspect of our life. Yes, for our business, because that's the whole point of today's podcast. But this isn't just about, it's our personal lives as well. And in terms of the ultimate currency, do not take the easy. You do not want to take the easy role, the easy button role. Learn these principles, like have AI help you, like how to think more strategically. Like, it does not matter whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, whether you're in service, whether you are the leader of your business. What you don't want to do, especially after having listened, if you've made it this far, especially after having to listen to us for a little over an hour, do not say, I'm going to push this off till next week because I got a vacation coming up. Do not wait. I cannot implore you enough. And I'm not saying that this is going to have instant gratification and all these things, but start thinking, and it's not just about AI, think more strategically. Every moment that passes is a day and a moment we're not going to get back. What are you going to be doing? Don, what are you going to be doing? What am I going to be doing to make a difference? And I will tell you what, I am here to make a difference. It does not matter where I am, personally or professionally. It could be as simple as smiling at someone. It could be opening the door. It could be helping someone to connect them with someone that's going to help them grow in their journey, in their career. We're here to make a difference. And I don't mean that just with words, I mean with our actions. There's so much hate in the world these days. I don't mean to go off into tangents, but we're here to truly make a difference. AI can help us personally and professionally, but do not put this off. I'm telling you, if you put this off, then something else is going to get in the way. Something else is going to get in the way. Something else is going to get in the way. 6 months is going to happen and you're not. Spend time each and every single day. Make it a daily habit. Watch podcasts, learn more. I'd say make sure that you're subscribed to all of Don's channels. He is a wealth of knowledge. I know he's interviewing me. I should be interviewing him because Don is the real expert with AI in terms of the complex systems that he does that makes things really simple. Yes, I know a lot about AI and I can teach some master classes on this, but I'll tell you what, I learned this through the School of Hard Knocks through experience. Spend each and every single day. But the big thing is make a difference and do not look for the easy button and figure out how you can deliver more value. I'll finish with this, be your authentic self and have tools like AI be more of your thought partner and your assistant, your co-pilot to help you achieve those goals in ways that were not available previously.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you achieve trust, right? So I want to say, hey, thanks. This is the end of the session. It's been an awesome, awesome session. I love the topic. Some people might come to learn about technology. Some might come to learn about something like this. But what we strive to do, or at least I strive to do, is to talk about things that are interesting, right? And hopefully the audience felt that this was. I certainly have. And David, I couldn't thank you enough, man. You owe me a podcast on your side. So ball's in your court. And just thanks again.
Got it. Thank you, Don, so much.